Aloha, it's Robert Stellick with Blue Planet Surf. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about our new Easy Foiler boards. We have 4 different models available. Before we get into that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the whole design concept behind the boards and the history. All right, let's go in the shop. So hydrofoiling has been around for quite a while now. It kind of started with the air chair, which was like a chair that was towed behind a boat. You would sit in it and foil. And then that was adopted to surfing. They were towing surfing with those foils, and the kite surfers got into it with smaller foils. But I think kind of when Kaileni posted his video of him foiling in a downwinder, that kind of started a whole new era of the sport. It's basically Alex Aguirre from GoFoils pioneered those foils that fly at lower speeds, thicker, bigger foils that don't need as much speed, so you can foil on a surfboard or a stand-up board. So foiling is probably the most efficient way you can move across the water. It's basically kind of like flying. Flying is to walking on land. It's the foil lifts up and you're totally off the water. The only thing that drags is the foil that's underwater. So it totally reduces the amount of drag, and it's very quiet also, and the speeds you can achieve are amazing on just small waves. So it's kind of a little bit addicting, that feeling of flying over the surface almost without any sound and just kind of very little drag. It's a very cool feeling, hard to explain, but it's an exciting new sport. So I got into it about a year ago, and then been working on making boards that are specifically designed for foiling. A lot of the boards that were available were basically just regular stand-up surfing boards with a foil box put in, and that works to learn on and so on. But then once you get into it, you want something that's more specific for the sport, because basically when you're surfing a stand-up board, the board is what's surfing and controls everything. So but on a foil, you paddle out on the board, you're catching the wave with the board, but as soon as you lift off, the board becomes totally irrelevant. The board is just a platform for your foil. So the foil is what you're surfing, and your feet are controlling it through the board. But the board itself no longer matters, because for turning and surfing, you don't really need the board. So what we found is the smaller you go, the smaller you can go with the board, shorter and narrower, the more maneuverable you are on the foil, because you have less swing weight. You can fit the board into tighter spots. The board's less likely to touch different spots and angles. Like when you're turning, a really wide big board will touch in the turn, versus a smaller, narrower board that's designed well, it won't touch as easily in the turn. So the design philosophy behind our board is obviously to make foiling as high performance as possible, but also I wanted to make it accessible and easy to learn, safe, and efficient as possible. So that's kind of the philosophy. Basically everyone's still a beginner at this sport, because it's only a little over a year old that anybody's really been doing it. Maybe a little bit longer, some people, but everyone's still a beginner. So making it easy is kind of a priority. We'll probably in the future have boards that are more high performance and boards and foils, but right now the focus is on making it easy to control and fun to fly it, and as easy to get into as possible, basically. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the design of these boards and the philosophy behind it and so on. So I'm going to start on the bottom, because that's what touches the water, is probably the most important thing. So basically, like I said, when you're foiling, you're riding the foil. So the most important part of a foil board is when you're paddling back out into the surf, and then the most important thing is catching the wave, making it easy to catch the wave, And what makes it easier to catch a wave, especially on a shorter board, is if you have good tracking, meaning you can keep your board going straight to catch the wave, and then creating a lot of lift, so you got that takeoff lift to get you up to speed, so you can fly on the foil. So some of the things behind what we did is have a fairly low rocker all the way through the back of the board. So there's a little bit of rocker in the tail, but it's a fairly low rocker. And then there is a nice little kick in the nose that basically, when you're catching the wave, you don't want the board to go under as your tail lifts up. So it's just to keep the board on the surface of the water. Also, if you do breach and you come down hard, this is what kind of keeps the nose from just going underwater, and helps you recover and come back up out of out of the breech. And then you'll see there's a concave in the nose, and it goes into a double concave in the center here, and then a V or double concave V in the tail. So, and what the concaves do obviously is channel the water, and that helps you with tracking, keeps the board tracking more straight. And then it also has these beveled rails, and these tucked under rails that have a fairly sharp edge right here. So that helps with lift as the water just kind of gets shears off of that edge, and you start to plane earlier, and you get more lift, and that helps you take off sooner. These boards, even though they're small, they're fairly easy to catch waves with. It's kind of surprising, and they're also surprisingly stable. Basically, we chopped off the nose and tail, so the outline is pretty straight, and then these rails are even more straight than the outline because they're kind of pulled in a little bit. This also helps a little bit when you're doing sharp turns, when you're carving on the foil. There's like less board to touch the water, and when you're carving. By tucking it under, that also makes the underside of the board a little bit narrower board basically. So, and then when you're paddling, you got more stability from these fat rails. The volume's also pretty high, if you can see that from the side here. These have pretty thick rails, so there's a lot of volume for the small size of this board. All right, so yeah, these down rails kind of transition into a regular tail in the back. So by coming back to the point here in the end, that line is more straight, which helps with tracking. Basically, those really straight rail lines here help the board track pretty straight, and we're still able to pull the tail in a little bit more. But overall, the tail is really wide and pretty thick. It's got a lot of volume in the tail, and that helps when you step back over your foil as you're taking off. The board won't sink off. Like if the tail is really thin, how we like it on a thin and narrow tails are great for surfing, bigger waves especially, but on a foil board it doesn't make sense, because then as soon as you step back to get over your foil, the tail sinks off, and it's like the opposite of what you want. You want it to lift up and get you on the foil. So more volume and a wider tail helps with that, and then has a sharp edge back here. I've seen some boards that have a lot of tail rocker or like a kick in the tail. I find this having a little bit flatter in the back helps generate speed on the takeoff. So it seems to work really well, the shape of the tail here. So let's look at the top of the board. Yeah, obviously there's a lot of volume in the rail, so when you're paddling back out, you got that volume and stability, even though these boards are very small. Like this is the one I'm riding personally. I'm like 195 my weight, and I ride the 6.6 by 28.5. It's 116 liters of volume, so that's plenty of volume for me. And once I got used to it, it's not too much of a problem to balance. But for starting out, probably one of the bigger models is better. Just more stability makes it easier to learn on. So what's really important when you're foiling is where to place your back foot. So one of the most important things is where you put your back foot. So we designed the deck pad to have a little arch bump here that's basically over the foil and kind of ends about an inch behind the back screw. So the back screw is really kind of where you want to have your foot. You want your foot on that back screw more or less, and then it has that tail kick, so when you're back here you're getting too far back. But as you get more advanced, you can put your foot kind of behind the back screw a little bit, and that helps with maneuverability and like fine-tune control of the foil. Creates more lift also for the foil, but it makes it a little bit more tricky to ride it at higher speeds, because you have to put more weight on your front foot. So when you're starting out, probably put your foot like right in the middle of this arch bar or so, and over the back screw maybe. But this is super important. Like basically, you want to be able to feel where your back foot is without looking, So that's where this comes in really helpful. And then of course we also have foot strap inserts here. So we have 2 rows, so that you can mount the front foot strap diagonally. That's what we recommend. And then the back foot strap, you can offset it a little bit to the side. That way you're more centered over the board. I recommend for starting out not using foot straps. I think it's just easier to learn and safer to not use foot straps when you're starting out. Just use your tactile feel for the back foot. The front foot, you can kind of orient yourself by that Blue Planet logo, and try different positions. Like if you feel that it's breaching too much, just get your foot a little bit more forward and keep your weight more on the front foot to keep the board from coming up too fast or too high. That's kind of the biggest issue in the beginning when you're learning, is that the board just shoots up because you put too much pressure on your back foot, and then you crash back down because as soon as the foil comes out of the water, it has no more lift. You always want to keep that foil in the water. So this was our first shipment of boards, and it only has a Tuttle box. It's an original Go foil Tuttle box that we put in our boards. It has the screws are recessed into the board, so there's no chance of scratching your shins or hurting yourself on the screw heads that are sticking out that can sometimes be quite sharp. So that's nice. And so it fits any deep Tuttle box foil. And then our next shipment, which is coming in mid-January, is also going to have both a Tuttle box in the middle and then the two US boxes on the side, so you can use it with a plate mount as well. So that pretty much covers all the foils on the market today, more or less, either Tuttle or plate mount foils you can use with these boards. So it's very versatile. The other nice new feature we have is the new SUP grip handle that for all our 2018 boards, we have these new handles that have a vent plug integrated into the handle. So that eliminates another installation on the board, saves a little bit of weight, and also it's one more place where the board could potentially leak. So we eliminated that, and the vent plug is inside the handle. And the handle is slightly offset so that the vent is over the stringer line. That way the vent vents both sides of the foam board, because the stringer kind of separates the two halves of the board. So we have two different constructions available in the Easy Foilers. This is our bamboo epoxy construction. It's actually a hybrid construction using glass, carbon. We use a carbon fiber deck where you stand, and most of the time, and most of your weight is absorbed by this extra strong carbon deck. And then on the rails and the nose and the tail, everywhere where you tend to hit with your paddle a lot and stuff, we have a Kevlar band that goes all the way around. So these Kevlar rails make the rails very resilient and strong. So yeah, especially on foil boards, it's important to have a strong construction, because when you come down hard from if you breach, the board's up pretty high, and then all of a sudden you lose the lift and you come down crashing pretty hard. So you need to have a board that's pretty solid. Also, that foil puts a lot of torque on the board when it gets worked in the white water or something, like if you get thrown around by a wave. You want a board that can hold up to that, those kind of forces. So this is our other construction here. This is the full carbon construction. So basically similar features. It actually has a sandwich deck with bamboo veneer sandwich, and then also has the Kevlar rails underneath the carbon here. So it's I would say it's not super light, but it's a little bit lighter than our bamboo construction. But the main thing is it's very strong and rigid and holds up really well. So carbon construction is like our premium construction, but either one will work fine for the average user. All right, so right now the Easy Foiler, we have it available in 4 different sizes. So there's the biggest one is the 7.6 by 30.5. We're actually sold out of it right now. We are getting another shipment in mid-January, so we anticipate those to sell pretty quick. So if you're interested in getting one, put your name on the list as soon as possible. Then we have the next size down is the 611 by 29.5 by 128 liters. This is a great board even for beginners that are a little bit lighter. The 6.6 by 28.5 by 116 liters. This is the model I'm using. It's a nice size, very compact, really nice performance board. So I'm like 195. I wouldn't recommend using this as a beginner at my weight, but like once you get a little bit of experience, this is a great board to use. The smallest one we have is the 6.0 by 27.5 by 98 liters. So it still has fairly good amount of volume, which just makes it a little bit easier to ride a smaller board, especially in choppy conditions. So, but this is basically for a lighter rider that's pretty experienced. All right, so I'm not going to get into all the pricing and details too much, but if you look in the description below, you'll find a link to our website that shows all these boards and the pricing. They're also going to be available from our Australian distributor soon, as well as in Europe, and basically you can get these all over the world. We can also air cargo ship boards to you if you're interested from Hawaii. Basically, this is I think that, you know, if you want a good foil board, it's hard to beat these boards right now. There's not much else on the market that's going to work as well as these boards. So we're really excited. Our new foils are going to be available soon too, and we're going to have a package deal where if you buy a board and a foil together, we'll give you an extra good price. So it might be worth waiting for that and getting the foil and the board at the same time. We hope to have our first shipment sometime next month in February. Yeah, once we get the foils, we'll post another video with the features of the foils and explain how to order them if you're interested in getting a package deal. If you want to put a hold on a board that's coming in, we can do that with a $200 deposit. And you can call our shop at 808-596-7755. All right, and that's it. Thanks for watching. This is Robert Sells with Planet Easy Foiler SUP. Have a great day.